Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Isenberg, and today we're going to talk about how you can accelerate serverless services development across your organization with templates. So, let me tell you a little story about CyberArk, where I work. So, about 5 years ago, we didn't have many SaaS services. We had a few services that had no connection between them, no shared UI field, and no connection between them. And CyberArk decided to create a new platform, a new experience for the customers, where all the services share the same UI and look and feel, and they're connected. Share the same observability tools behind the scenes, so everything is connected. So we decided to build a new platform, and for that, we started a new platform engineering team. We're about 10 people, and it was also decided that we will be serverless first. So we had a lot to learn, right? To be what does it mean to be a cloud provider, a SaaS cloud provider, and what it means to be serverless first. And so we built the first service, the tenant management customer onboarding service. And although serverless is amazing, we quickly realized that it's very different. We had new challenges that we needed to solve. And these challenges started right from the get go with the design stages. So the design in serverless is very different. You place Lego pieces together. You have your Lambda functions that you connect DynamoDB or API gateway to the Lambda, SNS, SQS. Everything is connected. Some of them are AWS managed services, some are core that you write, but it's very different in the design stages. Then you have the DevOps culture, the mentality, where you don't have a DevOps persona that handles Helm charts and he does all the deployment to the cloud. You have developers, actual developers, writing the infrastructure as a code, and when they need a new Lambda, they just write the CDK code or SAM template. They add that new Lambda function. So it's again the shift left to the DevOps culture. Everybody does DevOps, and the same goes for the CI/CD. You need your CI/CD pipeline to deploy those Lambda functions. So everybody does that. Then you have observability. How do you handle observability? How do you know how one request goes from one place to another, where some of these are your Lambda functions that you manage, and some of those are pieces that AWS manages. So we needed to figure that out. Then you have testing. How do you handle testing in Lambda? How do you test it locally? Do you run local stack? Do you run it locally? How do you mock things in the cloud? How everything is connected in the testing. And then regarding Lambda best practices, how do you write a Lambda function, right? What are the best practices? Do you write everything in the handler itself? Do you have different layers of sorts? So again, we need to solve that out. And then when you get closer to production, you need to handle things like security. While AWS manages the security of the cloud, the resources that you deploy and configure, that's your responsibility to maintain their security. And again, you have also FinOps. Things cost money. And then the closer you get to production, you need to think about scale and how much it's going to cost me. And then you're going to do some optimizations. So eventually, we got to a stable place with our new service, the tenant management. We kind of know when we figured it out. We knew what we're going to do. But then we realized that, okay, we have one service, right? And we now need to create more services for the platform, and we want to build them concurrently to have more people join the team. Again, we started with 10 people. Now we're going to be dozens. We're going to be 70 people. So you need to accelerate that, and then you want the organization itself to build new business services that connect to this new platform. So how do you accelerate the serverless adoption, and how do you do that while maintaining the standards and best practices so everybody can use the same tools, especially for observability when you want people to be able to debug their requests from customers that go between multiple services. You need to be able to have the same language, same tools to debug those requests. And we need to do that quickly. So what we did eventually is to build a template. So we're going to talk about um, basically the AWS Lambda Handler Cookbook, which is an open source template that I created. And we're going to use that template to basically explain what makes a good serverless template, what needs to be in your serverless template. And then I'm going to give you some homework with some action items, and then we're going to have a short summary. So a little bit about myself. I'm a principal software architect at CyberArk at the platform engineering division. I'm an AWS serverless hero for the past year. And I have a website called runthebuilder.cloud where I talk about AWS, serverless, and technology in general. So what makes a good serverless? What's a serverless template anyway? So a serverless template, as the name uh, as you might think. The template is basically a GitHub repository. Repository that you can scaffold and create your new service. And it has a compilation of golden path of set of standards and utilities. And basically what it allows the developers to have all the best practices, all the tools that they need to have for the for the serverless service. They don't need to reinvent the wheel. And then you have everything across the organization. Everybody's using the same tools, and the developers they can focus on the business domain side, and not they don't need to basically reinvent everything. They don't need to understand and figure out how to write the CI/CD pipeline, how to write the observability. It's already built in, and again, it's going to be reusable, so we can use it multiple times to get started quickly. So we're going to use the AWS Lambda Handler Cookbook as an example. And basically, it's my open source project that I used. It basically allows you in 3 steps in GitHub to start a new serverless service that you can deploy and test. It's based on Python, CDK for the infrastructure as code, and GitHub Actions for the CI/CD. It has over 400 GitHub stars, 100 clones per month, thousands of views, and the inspiration for this open source was basically the template, that original template that we are using at CyberArk. And that template is used by hundreds of developers. And we've built dozens, if not hundreds, of microservices with that template. So it comes with some knowledge and experience behind it. Right. So what does it provide you, this template? So the template provides you a good starting point, the way I see it. You have a basic API gateway and order service, that's what I call it. API gateway, Lambda function, DynamoDB table, which I think is the best database to start with, something new. You can always switch it, but it's a great starting point because it's very simple to work with and set up. I also added some idempotency features and feature flags, which are more production readiness features, but it's not mandatory. But I think what's most important is that you have tools and all the best practices that we're going to see in a second. They're already built in, and you're getting that for free. And of course, the template itself is fully deployable and testable on day one. Now, it's really important to remember that templates have context. While my cookbook implements global serverless concepts, it is still my tech stack, my approach, tools that I like, and my implementation. So the homework for you guys is to basically take that as an inspiration, either use it or make it your own. Change whatever you need to change to make so it makes sense for your organization. And another thing to remember, templates are a living entity. Nobody writes the perfect template on day one, and you usually start with something and then you change it, people use it, you get feedback, which is critical, and then you change it, you add new steps, you change, you build, people use it, and so forth. So it's never perfect on the first try anyways. Now let's talk about what these templates need to contain. So starting from the folder structure, you're going to have the service, the business domain, the Lambda code. Then you're going to have the tests folder. You're going to have the unit tests, the end-to-end tests. And then you're going to have the infrastructure, which is very critical. This is very interesting. I used CDK. You can use SAM, Terraform, whatever you want. I'd use CDK. But the thing is, the infrastructure as code. It has a folder inside the same repository with your business domain, right? So it's again this DevOps culture, this mentality the developers they write also the infra and also they write the business domain code. It's the shift left of DevOps culture. So they handle it right from the get-go. Now, as for the infra as code, it not just creates all the resources, it has important resource configurations. It starts from security. with tools like CDK that scan your CloudFormation template and scan for misconfigurations for security reasons, right? You have FinOps optimizations. Maybe in dev accounts, you want to have a smaller machine for OpenSearch, and in production, you're going to have a much powerful machine. You have backups, you have performance optimizations. Maybe you have provision concurrency in production, but not really in dev accounts. And then you have stack tags, which are also included in the cookbook. The stack tags are really critical if you want to have better visibility to which every resource who built it, right? You need to know the team, the service, the microservice. It's really critical when you have multiple services that deploy to the same account. Now, as for the pipeline, it's really critical that developers get a fully working pipeline from day one. I use GitHub Actions, and this pipeline needs to get them to production from day one. I don't want them to worry about it. I want the pipeline to work and have all the best practices and all the tools that they can think of. So in this example, these are the tools that I have in the cookbook. It's the project setup, install dependencies, run the formatters, linter, secret linter, docs linter, because we have documentation there, GitHub pages, run unit test, run the CDK nag for the security linter, complexity checks, deploy and build the Lambda function. I don't want them to figure out how to do that. It should be baked in into the template. Then you run the integration test, the end-to-end test on the AWS account, code coverage, and even Swagger Open API generation that I have built in. So everything is already working on the day one. It should be very simple, and it should support production. And here you can see example. Once you merge a PR into the cookbook, it also deploys to the staging account, runs some tests, and also to the production where it doesn't run the end-to-end tests. And then it even publishes the GitHub pages documentation with the Swagger and the Open API. Again, everything just works out of the box. The developers don't need to think about that. It's very important. Then we get to the point where we need to learn how to write the Lambda function. How do you write the handler? Do we write everything inside the handler? Do we write with it multiple layers? So yes, you should have an example for the developers to know what is expected of them to write and how to write it. So here in this example, in the cookbook, I have an example for a handler with the handler layer, the domain layer, and the integration layer. The handler layer does the input validation, the config load. Domain layer is the business logic, and the integration is the interface with AWS or any database or external service. So it's really critical that they have something that works and they know how to write it, how to write the next handler. And then you have the best practices for Power Tools. Power Tools is an amazing open source library that you definitely should check. It has all the tools that you need for a production ready serverless service. So in this case, I'm using the input validation, the error handling, the logger, tracing with X-ray, metrics for CloudWatch metrics. Again, should be built in out of the box. And then you can have organization SDKs such as security. In our case, we have a tenant isolation SDK, which is really critical if you want people to use it. So you have an example out of the box that works, so people know how to use it for the next handler. Testing. So testing, again, each organization does it a bit differently, but I think everybody does unit integration and end-to-end. But it's critical that you show the developers how do you expect them to write tests, what is the best methodology, how do you write the integration tests, how do you write the unit tests, how do you mock the cloud, how you work with the end-to-end tests. So it's really critical, again, to have something that has built-in tests out of the box that they know how to extend and write the next one. Then you have unified observability. Again, it's really critical to have fully working observability out of the box so everybody can use the same tools and speak the same language when they debug production. So in this case, I'm going to use, the cookbook uses Power Tools SDK, which is the logger for writing JSON logs for CloudWatch, the metrics to write custom CloudWatch metrics for KPIs. Then you have traces. We're using X-ray for performance benchmarking to understand the service maps. And then you have dashboards that I write in the cookbook, in the CDK code. I generate CloudWatch dashboards that incorporate all these elements, the logs and the metrics and the alarms. and everything is connected together. You're going to have alarms for when you have something bad, like a bad log, error logs, or thresholds of metrics that are not supposed to get there. So everything together gives you that unified observability, and the cookbook builds you these tools out of the box. You get the perfect production observability right on day one. So what should you do? Basically, create a template, make it your own, add your own, change the CI/CD tools, change the infrastructure as code, use SAM, Terraform, whatever you want to do. Use a different observability tool. I use Datadog. You can use whatever you want. Add other languages support. I did for Python, but you can use other languages. Add a front-end template. Add your own organization SDKs. Build templates and make it your own. So thank you very much. Let's summarize it. So templates, they reduce cognitive load. They provide you a serverless golden path, and you need to have all the best practices that we discussed here. And you need to understand it's going to be an iterative process. You're going to add more and more things, and basically you should make it your own. Add your technical tech stack to the templates. So thank you very much.